confess Jesus is Lord and that gays are bad? Hi, I'm Mark.
Hi, I'm Scott, and this is Church is Lame, the podcast where we talk about the stupid things that churches do that break the entire body. Mark, what'd you find this week?
Nothing good.
Well,
I mean, I shouldn't have to say that out loud, right? I mean, that's the
Right.
entire point of this podcast. Yeah, so the Cristian Reformed Church, which is described as a small evangelical denomination of the United States and Canadian churches, had voted this past week, and this is the really dumb part, to codify, in quote unquote, to codify its opposition to homosexual sex by elevating it to the status of confession or declaration of faith.
okay.
Yeah, so,
Can I just say this first before you jump into this?
oh, please.
Anytime a church calls themselves a Reformed church, I just read that as old white people. We are the old white people church.
Yeah, that would kind of be the legacy of John Calvin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sad but true. Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, no problem. And it's like, some people might like hear this and be like, okay, well, what's the problem with that? Like, well, for me, the problem is pretty simple, is that it's a status of confession. So, the confession that a church would have, you could look at it in terms of like the, creeds, the Apostles' Creed, the Athanasian Creed, the Nicene Creed, right? Like these are just statements of, these are the truths of the faith that we affirm.
Right.
And to elevate your opposition to LGBT people into that level of confession or statement of faith is just utterly absurd, because it's not something that it's not like a primary doctrine.
Right.
It's like, I mean, the way I would describe it is like, you have your primary doctrines, like these are the core things of the faith, that basically as you see them in the Apostles' Creed, like those basic truths, like that's what we affirm, and then you have secondary doctrines, which are going to be things that kind of naturally flow out of that, so like we would respect, like the authority of teachers, we would, respect the authority of scripture and et cetera, and then you have like everything else, in terms of like, this is the stuff for like moral living, right? And this is like the stuff that you would just teach. Like the creeds are like that highest order of stuff. A confession is going to be like that secondary level stuff. Like that's like when you look at the Westminster Confession, which is a big, Christian Reformed, confession. It's like, it's all that other stuff. And then like this, like whether or not something is a sin to you is, like this is all just like regular stuff. Like we don't need to confess this. Like this is not like something that should ever become a litmus test for whether or not you're a believer.
Right. Yeah, I've got two thoughts that come to mind immediately, and both of them are super simple. I don't even know that they're worth like long form discussion. The first one being, how in the world do you codify something that there isn't wide consensus on? If anything, the conversation around the LGBTQ and their place in the church is only getting more complex, not less complex. You know what I mean? So codifying it does nothing except announce to the world that you are the church that wants to put your head in the sand, right? We don't want to talk about this. We don't want to deal with it. We believe what we believe, and everybody else is just wrong, And so the second half of that thought is how do you codify something in the context of a Christian, in the context of a church, that is in direct opposition to what the Bible is trying to tell us, right? Because the way I read the Bible tells me that there's a seat at the table for everybody, for the Jew, for the Gentile, for the righteous, for the sinner, for the strong, for the broken, right? There's a seat at the table for everybody. So the minute you try to take what you believe and bolt onto it things that are in direct opposition to what the Bible's teaching, you have lost the plot on a grand eternal level.
Right. Because like this is elevating this thing to a level that shouldn't be at.
Yeah,
And it's,
definitely.
and there were people within the denomination who were even saying that, like, hey, doing this is a bad idea because it's just going to alienate LGBT believers, and that's very true. I mean,
Sure.
like, when I go online and I'm looking at a church, that I've never seen before, and I look at their statement of faith, a lot of times they'll see, we affirm traditional marriage, blah, 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 blah. Don't be gay. It's like, okay, the fact that you put that on your front door, so to speak,
Yeah,
that's everything I need to know, that I don't want anything to do with you.
exactly.
And
Yeah.
like, if you want to say that, your church is a place where everybody can come to receive the gospel, then you don't codify what groups are not welcome.
Right.
And especially when, like, the divorce rate in the church is greater than 50%,
Mm-hmm.
but like the rate of homosexuality in the church is quite the heck a lot less.
Yeah.
And, have you codified your hatred of divorced people into your
Yeah.
confession? Because if you
Right.
haven't, then let me tell you, you're being a lot of a hypocrite.
Yeah.
It's like, there's more, it's like alcoholism is a bigger problem than this. It's like, anything that you can think of is a bigger problem than this. And that's
Right.
if you call this a problem to begin with, which a lot of people don't. And the fact that you think that, you can just step out of the conversation before it's over and like
Right.
codify it into like and it's like, that's maybe that's the worst part of it to me. It's just like, they're like, this is their way of saying, I'm taking my ball and I'm going home.
Yeah. Can I pretend to be smart for a minute?
No,
Oh no.
that's,
Okay.
that's my thing, man. I pretend to be smart.
So my favorite word of 2022 is the word univocality, right? And so in the world of Christians, that word applies to the Bible, and that this collection of books that was written over thousands of years, they all speak with a single point of view and a single frame of mind and a single context, univocality, right? But it doesn't. It just doesn't. The writers of the Pentateuch had no idea. They had no idea that Jesus was coming, right?
Mhm.
They had no idea that Jesus was going to come again after that, right? The people who wrote about Jesus after they had heard the eyewitness testimonies, these are still not, by our modern scientific standards, the best minds that the world has to offer, right? We're taking and trusting testimony from people who see in part, right? And so we should trust the part that they see and not worry so much about the part that they don't, right? And here, thousands of years later, we can look back at all of it and we can kind of see where there are tears in the fabric of understanding, right? So now, like, we can understand, okay, well, if homosexuality is always wrong and has always been wrong, we can ask questions like, well, why do we see homosexuality in almost all of the animal kingdom? Why don't we only see heterosexuality in the animal kingdom? Did God make a mistake there? Why don't we always see heterosexuality in the plant kingdom? We see asexuality in the plant kingdom. So is God making mistakes, or is there something to this, alternatives to what we call traditional heterosexuality, that actually has a purpose? And we're just not there yet. In our minds and our understanding, we just don't have the big picture yet, and we still exist in these tears of understanding. And I personally think it's hubris to think that we don't exist in those tears.
Oh man, we for sure exist in those. I mean, anybody who thinks they actually understand anything is deluding themselves, really. I mean,
Right.
like we see so much of the world, it's just in this one little tiny sliver.
Yeah.
It's like, no matter how well informed you think you are about, international trade policy, right? You still don't understand that thing. It's too big of a system. It's too complicated. You cannot understand everything clearly. And it's just like, that's how the entire world is, and the thing, like, I mean, this might piss some people off, but I mean, it's like, you have all these biblical principles, and, Jesus says, like, the law and the prophets depend on the commandments to love your Lord, your God, with all your heart, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself.
Right.
If all the commandments depend on that, that's a big thing. That's really telling us that these two things are the principle from which all other teaching is ultimately derived. And so, if you understood homosexuality to be one thing in, let's say 1500 BC, you're going to apply that wisdom according to your understanding of that phenomenon.
Right.
But we understand things now, and we don't completely understand things now, of course, but we understand more now, right? Like we understand it a lot differently than people understood it even, 100 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's like when you are trying to take that core, those core greatest commandments and apply those to our current understanding, that doesn't make you a bad person.
Right.
That's what we should be doing. And of course, some people are going to come out and say like, well, hey, what? I think that we should be fully inclusive, of LGBT people.
Mm-hmm.
And other people are going to be like, no, I think it's gross and bad. And I think honestly, for a lot of people, that's kind of what it is. It's just that it's icky.
Yeah.
I don't like saying that about people, but like we are still, we're evolved things. We're still kind of, internally in the deep parts, right? We're still monkeys.
Right.
I know not monkeys, we're apes, but whatever.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Don't call me out in the comments.
Right.
I like calling I like calling people monkeys. It's a lot more fun. Monkeys are cuter than gorillas. And chimpanzees, they frighten me, so
Exactly.
Monkeys are nice and cute, but like, that's also, a bad racial slur too. So, maybe I shouldn't be using that anymore in my life, right?
Well, it wouldn't be a show unless we made somebody mad. So go ahead and flame us in the comments. The doors are open. Go ahead and have at it.
Oh.
Yeah. The other part, like that is just part of the human experience, is we don't seem to have evolved far enough to really believe God when he says judgment is mine. Right. We love condemning people,
Mm-hmm.
And certainly like I think words matter. Right. And so I think that like I call it a new trend, right? This new trend of using the word, we affirm something or we don't affirm something. That is, in my opinion, that's an important step in vocabulary for Christians, because it's a way of expressing where we are and what we think without necessarily condemning people, or like what people do with Billy Graham, right? They raise him to like the left hand of the Father, as somehow he's like superhuman in the work and the life that he had, right? So we tend to raise people up to these unreasonable highs, and we tend to push people down to the lowest of lows, and neither one of those are an appropriate place for you and I to be as people who follow in the dust of Christ. Like instead we should just be kind of bringing people in, whatever that means. Like we should be finding people to walk beside and hopefully living the kind of life where people want to walk beside us. And if we can accomplish that, that's a life well lived.
Yeah. And there's a kind of a big divide there. And the language I've heard used to describe this, it's the language of, sacramentalism or revivalism. Whereas like the revivalist is really looking for that transformation that brings people to God. Whereas, whereas, the sacramentalist is trying to get everybody in the front door and participating, and then letting God transform them.
Right.
And so it's like, it's this relationship to transformation that's kind of like, they're not mutually exclusive of each other, but they kind of focus on two different sides. And like you and me, I think, I know myself, but like from the way you talk about things, right? Like you would sound like you are with me in that sacramentalist camp.
Yeah.
Like
for sure.
We want you in the door. We want you sitting in the pews, singing hymns and worshiping Jesus, regardless. It's like, if you believe it, come and do it. We'll deal with what's wrong with you tomorrow.
Right.
Because it's going to be a lifetime of doing that, right? And we need each other through this. So like, I need to tell you what's wrong with me first, so you know what you're getting into.
Yeah, look. Here's the deal. I have a verse. My verse is eat, drink, and be merry. Okay, that's my verse. So like, if you like, love God, love one another, eat, drink, and be merry. We can deal with all the other stuff some other time.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like eat, drink, and be merry. For tomorrow, we get a hangover and we have to lament everything.
Preach.
You know? But, you know, so kind of getting back on track with this janky thing that happened here. So, you know, apart from somebody having the sense to say, hey, you know, this is going to alienate people, I think there's another side of that is that Calvin University, so I guess in December, a third of the faculty signed a letter expressing concerns about the Human Sexuality Report, which is this internal document that the Christian Reformed Church had created. That's like, you know, gays are bad, okay? And I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, and the article says, and some are now expected to leave. Well, yeah, you know, it's like I was reading this stuff and it was talking about like this university, you know, had like a student alliance where there was like an openly gay president of the student alliance at Calvin University, right? So it's like the university, when it came to students, was pretty accepting, or at least not condemning, of its LGBT student body. But then, you know, you have this happening, which is going to really, it's going to have to be like a top down thing, right? They're going to be like, okay, well, you know, we're going to require, because it's a confession now, they're going to have to require that their staff sign that statement of faith.
Right.
And so they're going to have people leave. And if it's the statement of faith of the school, then I would have to imagine it's the same statement of faith that students are going to have to sign up to.
Right.
I know, because, you know, with Wheaton College, you know, like the student statement of faith and the faculty statement of faith were, you know, mildly different in character, because one of them is staff, right? You need a little different things for staff, but it was overall the same statement of faith.
Right.
You know, so it's like, what's that going to do, you know, to this organization? You know, I'm kind of afraid that, like, you know, whatever environment that they could have provided that was a good Christian environment for LGBT students to be in is going to be lost.
Well, good. Let's hope enough staff leaves, and let's hope enough students leave that the place shuts down. Like, I don't think it's any secret now that I am not necessarily against the idea of awful Christian institutions dying.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I never would have picked that up.
Right. Like, what's law of thermodynamics? Energy cannot be created or destroyed. It's just converted. Right.
That's one of them.
Like, I think, like, you can see that in politics. Like, there seems to be a finite amount of power in politics. And I think there seems to be a finite amount of room for power players in the Christian world. Mm-hmm. And certainly some of these big schools and universities end up being some of the power players as they do create the next generation of Christian thought leaders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I'm all for the creative destruction, and I have no heartbreak as I don't know, what do you call it? Anachronistic Christian institutions, letting the clock stop on them and just kind of letting them wither away. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, you know, and you know, it's like, even, I mean, like, Wheaton College is a pretty uptight place when it comes to the whole LGBT thing, right? That's not a secret. There's, you know, an organization of students and alumni called the One Wheaton Network, which is, you know, for, you know, LGBT students and allies, and that's because it's been a thing, you know. But a lot of people still like Wheaton College in spite of, you know, that issue. But it's not in the thing of statement of faith. It's like, hey, you know, it's like celibacy in marriage, and, you know, faithfulness in marriage, celibacy outside of marriage. You know, that's the expectation. Like nobody who isn't married at Wheaton College shouldn't be out doing the nasty.
Right.
You know, and so it's like, if you are an LGBT student, you're no different than a straight student who's single, right? You know, it's like, just be there and do your thing, you know, but like, you do have to hide the fact that you are gay, you know, and that sucks.
Right. There are people who are willing to put up with a certain measure of silliness from, especially like you said, Christian institutions like Wheaton,
Mhm.
because the trade-off is an academically rigorous time of training,
Yes.
right? Which is worthwhile. And so you make the trade, right? I'm going to put up with this cultural silliness because I find value in the academic rigor, right?
Mhm.
The trade-off that sometimes is less obvious is that when these institutions try to do what this Christian Reformed Church is doing, which trying to codify homosexuality as a declaration of faith, like they think they're just codifying it for themselves and saying we're going to do what you want to do, and you guys go do what you want to do,
Mhm.
and that's the theory. But in practice, what's happening is when they codify, they codify their opposition to homosexuality. The subtext of that is we speak for intellectual, academic, and theological rigorousness. And therefore, we think, and you should understand, that we speak for Jesus.
Right. Like I said, it's like, it's when you have anything in a statement of faith or a confession, it's as if you're just writing it on the front door of your church or your school
Yeah.
or where your home or wherever, right? It's like, what you're saying when you're saying like, we affirm that, we believe that, that there is God. So we're saying by virtue of that, like, we don't really want atheists to be here,
Right.
but, it's like at the church should still at least be welcoming to an atheist who wants to come in and participate, It's
Yeah,
like, if
but
you
that's
want
the thing.
yeah.
Like they don't just paint that on their front door.
Right.
What they do, like here's a word picture. Maybe this makes sense.
Mhm.
What they do is they take the holes that were the nails through Jesus' hands, they fill those holes back in, and they put a tattoo there that says "I hate gay people" on the hands of Jesus. You know what I mean? And that's just not how Jesus feels. He doesn't hate gay people. He doesn't hate prostitutes. He doesn't hate tax collectors. These are the people that he came to love on,
Yeah, I mean, like that's the big point, right? It's like Jesus came and loved people that everybody else hated.
Yeah.
And that's how we have to be. And like these things, like, making it part of our statement of faith or putting it on our front door of our church, literally or figuratively, it's not doing that. It's not loving our neighbors ourselves. It's like, we don't have to transmit to the world everything that we affirm in some way, shape, or form. It's like, you just come and be part of this, and you can learn about, ask me, what do you want to know? Like, we'll teach you, what we think and about this, and this. And if you, don't agree with everything, you're still welcome to be here. It's like and that's the madness to me. It's like, I want everybody to be going to church and be part of that family and be part of that community and to make it better and to be worshiping God, no matter, how, perfect people think they are, you're not, because you're human. So it's like, let's just do this. And, let's stop trying to walk out of conversations about, present issues like, gays and especially transgender people, right? Like, we shouldn't be like trying to just walk out of that conversation before it's over. Like, we're not doing anybody a service. Like, when we come down to that question of, so like, how does this break the church? For me, how it breaks the church is simple. It's like, we are taking a thing that needs to be discussed and needs to be discussed thoroughly, and we need to agree on, or we need to reach some sort of agreement on, and we are elevating the positions we want to have, basically to canon before like we even like have, any kind of solidarity in the body.
Yeah.
And that's bad. I mean, it's like, it's like this kind of thing is slowly like kind of like piecemeal schisming the church. I mean, we already saw it with the United Methodist Church having that problem. And like the end of this article here was even saying that, there's already been a split among Reformed churches over LGBT inclusion.
Yeah.
And this is going to press it into happening again. So it's like, like where like the church is allowing itself to be torn apart over a thing that's not a central doctrine.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the part, like, I think you've got it right, and I think you kind of hinted around it, but let me just kind of say it as plainly as I could.
Okay.
This conversation about the LGBTQ and their place in the church, this is, to me, in my mind, and this is no different than asking, does the color green have a place in the church? That's all it is. Like, okay, the heterosexuals, you are the color blue, and the LGBTQ, you're the color green. Yes, the answer is yes. You all have a place in the church, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here's the reason why, in my mind, because if anybody by definition doesn't have a place in the church, we are fundamentally saying that we don't believe Jesus is capable of redeeming their lives, whatever that means. Whatever redeeming. I don't mean to say that redeeming means that we will convert homosexuals straight. I don't mean to say that. I mean whatever God wants to do through the process of redeeming, right? When we cast people out, not based on anything they did to the church or to anybody in the church, but if we just keep people away on general principle, we are basically saying we don't believe in Jesus' ability to redeem the situation.
Right. And I think, the way you said that is pretty beautiful, because, when, it's supposed to be Jesus's job to transform. And all too often, right, we see that what people are doing is that, we're trying to invoke that transformation on your behalf. It's like, I see in you a thing that is wrong. So, and that's very obvious, so let's say, you do drugs. That's bad for you. So, or let's say, maybe saying doing drugs is a bad one. I'll just say you're an alcoholic, right? So alcohol, it's destroying your body, it's destroying your life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I want you to stop being an alcoholic. But there's that possibility that what God is speaking to that alcoholic is, I need you to be more generous with people.
Mm-hmm.
Because the thing that God wants you to transform may not be the thing I want you to transform.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
And I feel like that's what a lot of this is. It's a lot of people saying, well, you have to transform this thing about you, even though I'm full of fear and I need to transform that, even though I'm on my third marriage and I need to repent of that, it's like,
yeah.
It's like there's all this absurdity that we are the ones that know better than what God does is what that individual needs to transform. And it's the idea to them that God would never ask you to stop being gay, or God would never ask you to, to detransition if you're trans. Like the idea that God would just never ask that of those people it's a distressing thought. And it shouldn't be. I mean, it just shouldn't be.
Right. Yeah. I hear that. That'll preach, man. That'll preach.
Yeah. I hope it would at least.
I like it. All right. So, YouTube is amazing. We love it. We love the community. We love the support we've been getting. We appreciate you so much. We have an interesting comment from Nancy Albino, and I think this is one of those comments that got lost in translation.
Mm-hmm.
But let me read it, and then let's try to do some Sherlock Holmesing of what happened here. Holmesing. Words is hard. I don't think that came out right. But okay. Okay, so Nancy says, you're a pastor, a servant of God. You're supposed to help people and not degrade others. Let God be the one to decide what is the purpose of the world. Act the way they do. So right now I have nothing else to say to you, but I will block you. Thanks, devil child.
Yeah, that's definitely kind of feels like a Google Translate thing.
Like I was right with her on the first half. Like on the front nine, I was right there. Right, you're a pastor, servant of God. You're supposed to help people and not degrade others. Right there with her.
Dig it.
But then like she changes. I don't know if she changed like from first person to second person or what. So right now I have nothing else to say to you, but I will block you. It's like, well, we don't believe this. Mark and I don't believe this. We don't think gay people should be killed by the government. We don't endorse this idea. If you watch the video, we hate the idea. You know, so I'm wondering if Nancy even watched the video or if she just saw the thumbnail and the title and decided that she knew what we were saying.
Yeah, I mean, either that or it is just like it's a Google Translate issue that, you know, ended up being real weird and just rendering it in a way that is just like doesn't really do it justice. But you know, hopefully, Nancy, yeah, don't think we support putting people to death for any reason. I mean, my goodness.
Right. Yeah, Nancy, in the words of the great pop artist Paul Young, why don't you come back? Please hurry. Why don't you come back? Please hurry. Come back and stay with us. Sorry, was that I thought that would be funny. I thought that'd be funny. Sorry.
I mean, like I'm laughing on the inside. Don't worry.
Okay.
But
Subscriber.
It's also too true.
Right. I'm listening to the song in my head as I'm saying it. New subscribers, you guys are continually amazing. That more and more of you are joining the conversation. By all means, you know, we want to thank folks like Marcus Green 251, and you know, if there's 250 other Marcus Greens, we'd love you to stop by as well. And Art Campos, thanks for subscribing. And as long as you're on YouTube watching this video, you know, leave a comment down below. Tell us what you think about this war that the church seems to be waging on homosexuality. You know, do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think there's a better way forward? Do you think we just need to stop altogether? Let us know what you think. So leave a comment. You know, if you like the show, hit the subscribe button. Hit the thumbs up if you know you like what we're making. Hit the bell to be notified. Click all those things. Click them all. And if you want to get a hold of us directly, you can always email us at churcheslanepodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, you know, and I'd be curious to know, like, you know, if people what they think is the bigger of two evils here is it Hawaiian pizza, or is it the fact that we don't have Rob Bell on here yet?
I've got strong opinions on that one, on both topics. So strong opinions about the Hawaiian pizza, but I will keep them to myself because that's a whole different war.
And I'm willing to have that war, but I have all the guns and hand grenades and bombs that I need.
There you go.
But hey, you know, I'm from around Chicago, so I'm allowed to be pretentious about pizza.
About food in general, if you're around Chicago.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, Rob Bell. We, you know, once again, what can I say? We are just so full of ourselves that sometimes we forget that you're waiting for us to push the button and get you in here.
Yeah, but you know, hey, until then, you know, hey, you know, we love you guys, every one of you that listens to us and watches us, and please, you know, feel free to comment at us and email us. We just, you know, we want you to be part of this conversation as well. And, you know, with that, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May he make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May he lift his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Amen.